you're a nerdpreneur, right, you're definitely looking at this idea of like, this is my thing. How do I make my thing available to other people? Do other people want my thing? And then if they do want my thing, how do I make it so that they understand, or the people that may not know they want my thing will want my thing?
Keep it nerdy. Keep it nerdy. Keep it real nerdy. Nerdpreneur, you know I love my work. Life's a game, so I'ma take my turn. Nerds deserve to put their passion first. Let them rap a verse so they can all be heard.
Yeah, my nerdy passion basically is drawing.
Correct. I'm a breeder of tarantulas, importing tarantulas and some other critters.
I am a harpist. I do mainly Celtic harp, video game songs, songs from nerdy TV shows.
Obviously, I'm big on Star Trek.
It is creature design, fantastical biological creations out of watercolor.
We are dice retailers.
Nerdpreneur, you know I love my work. Life's a game, so I'ma take my turn. Nerds deserve to put their passion first, so let them rap a verse so they can all be heard.
Welcome to Nerdpreneur, where we have fun conversations with people making money with their nerdy passion. My name is Chris, and as always, I'm joined by my co-host, Frank.
Hello.
And today we have a very special guest for you. He's the co-owner of TinkerHouse Games. Chris, welcome to Nerdpreneur.
Hi, everybody.
Hi, how are you, man?
I'm great.
So, Chris, what is your nerdy passion?
I would have to say that my nerdy passion falls directly in the form of building things. Building and constructing and creating physical things.
Things. What things do you create? Because that could be a lot of things. There's a lot of things in the world.
For example, our current offering at TinkerHouse Games is TinkerTurf, which is an engineered sci-fi terrain for RPG war games.
Oh, cool. So just for people who may not know, in case RPG war games like, say, Warhammer Necromunda, 40K, those kind of things. We actually have interviewed a few 40K influencers before, so some of our people might be aware of what they are. But you make the terrain in which people would play on, I guess, right?
That's correct.
Cool.
What is unique about the terrain right off the bat? Like, what makes this terrain unique to say, like, I don't even know the other names of brands right now.
Well, our unique thing is that we create a lightweight board stock pre-printed terrain that you just put together with a PVA glue, like a white glue, Elmer's glue type thing. It breaks down relatively small, so you can store it and transport it. Doesn't go all the way flat pack yet, but it does, break down enough that you could put it in your closet in a bin and take it out to play.
So it doesn't take up like an entire basement of terrain. Yeah, because I've seen some terrain before of people who are terrain builders, and they have entire workshops full of like proper terrain because it takes up a lot of space. So you have flat, very, like, we met you at PAX West, and so when you were there, you guys were selling packs that I thought people could actually like pack in their bags to take home even. Yeah,
it is. I mean, we sell like a little block of wood. Of, it's heavy.
Yes, dense.
It's dense. Yes, it's a dense, compact little block that you take home, punch out, glue together, and put on your table. No need to paint. It's all pre-printed. So that makes it an easier hobby lift than a painted terrain that you would have to glue together already.
Yeah, when we spoke last time, you actually mentioned some of the challenges that go along with this product. And I look forward to us diving into that and some of the challenges around manufacturing something like this. But before we get there, I'd love it if we could start just at the beginning of how this company, or even maybe before then, how did you get into this world? How did you start pursuing this nerdy passion?
My nerdy passion being like building stuff, when I was in grade school, I loved arcades. I'm a kid of the, 70s, 80s, right? So like going to arcades was my big thing. And I liked arcades so much that I used to build tiny little arcade games out of like, lined notebook paper. They'd be 3D, I'd fold a piece of notebook paper together into a little game box, and I'd have a couple of pencils with a long piece of paper, and I'd draw the artwork on it and scroll through this video game that would have like moving pieces with the controller. I'd build these little technical things just so that I'd have this neat little video game that was, about 8 inches high.
Whoa. What? That is mind blowing. So you were using your imagination to create a video game with paper and pencils.
Yeah. So I'd take the paper and fold it up. So I'd have a little tube box, like an arcade game, unfold the front, cut a hole in it, use a couple of pencils with a long strip of paper that I would draw the game on, roll it up on one pencil, and then unroll it as I played with the little, paper clip guy on the inside. So I could create a little movable scrolling game.
Kind of like Galaga?
Yeah, or, my favorite game back then was Tron, right? So I loved Tron so much. I built a little light speed bike, out of paper that hooked to a paper clip. It was just fun building and creating a three-dimensional thing that was, part of my passion.
Were you also a Lego nerd at all? Like, did you get into Lego when it came out to be able to build? Or
Legos, but I wasn't really a big, blockhead back then.
Okay.
Like, that wasn't I don't know what it was that didn't, drive me into Legos. Because I had all sorts of other like toys that helped. Like I don't know if you guys remember. I don't know. I'm pretty old, so I'm going to be dating myself a little bit. There used to be a battle tank that you could program. It was like a tank thing that had a bunch of accessories for it as well. But it was like a T9 keypad on the top, and you could program the directions and the distance that this thing would travel, and it'd make sounds and lights, and it'd shoot and it'd turn. And I loved that. It was kind of like an introduction to programming for me, which sparked my adulthood programming things for Arduinos and LED lights and building things like that, engineering electronic devices.
Wow. So how did that, so it sounds like you were like you were kind of a nerd from the beginning, I guess, right? In the time, and the golden age of nerds back in the 80s and 70s with like, I'm thinking Stranger Things kids and that kind of thing, going to arcades and,
I got into Dungeons and Dragons when I was a kid in the 80s, but the idea of like drawing these creatures, like I was an artist, I've always been like an arty kid. So like, ever since I was little, like drawing in kindergarten, the teacher said, he puts fingers on his hands and bodies on when he's drawing. You should probably push him towards art. So I kind of went that direction, and I was involved. I got heavily into like D&D, and I drew an image for a toy store I grew up in Alaska, up in Anchorage, and I won like a contest, a drawing contest, where I then got all of the Dungeons and Dragons, like Player's Guide and Monster Guide and all of the stuff for that. And I used to love drawing these fantasy creatures and drawing my character on character sheets and stuff. But then shortly after that, we had I don't know, people kind of remember the panic around the satanic panic of the 80s.
Yep, I remember that. Yeah.
Yeah, so that happened, and all my stuff disappeared. So I kind of stopped doing that.
No way.
I just kind of fell off of that train, and here I am. Like, one of our newest products at TinkerHouse Games is called the Vault of Many Things, which is a Dungeons and Dragons, Pathfinder kind of like toolkit for fantasy role playing. And we have like, over 850, characters in the base set and
that's wild.
And terrain items for playing Dungeons and Dragons games. So I'm like back into this thing that I kind of left behind, my, 12, 13-year-old self left behind, but I still remember. Wow. So like building that has been exciting.
I bet. Especially if you had to give it up as a kid. I it's one of those things where you think back and it's like, man, it was so ridiculous what happened during that time period where everyone was freaking out about Dungeons and Dragons being satanic. And, I can imagine all the Christian parents and stuff out there just saying, oh my God, we got to get rid of all this. And now it's having such a resurgence.
Religious.
Oh no.
Yeah.
There's already not that much to do in Anchorage. So like you would think they would want you to just have something to be able to use your imagination. But your product is for war games, which is not quite the same as D&D. Did you get into like war games and modeling and all that kind of stuff? Was that like a passion for you later or?
Yeah. So my entry into the Tinkerturf world was, through one of my good friends and my partner, Lane Daughtry, at TinkerHouse Games. And he's, he was really into Necromunda growing up. And I was invited as one of the friends to come and start playing, tabletop war games with them. And our goal was to build a tabletop RPG, a fantasy RPG game, and then, create our own characters and systems and dice systems, and publish a game. And that happened, and we started, building this game out. And then we decided, okay, we should have a terrain offering with this game. So we went down the path of starting to build terrains and for the game, and it quickly became very obvious that this terrain that we were building could be for any setup. Why don't we just pivot to just building terrain that people need for all of these games? And then anybody can use this game. Like you want to play 5 parsecs, you could play with our tabletop terrain. You want to play, Necromunda, you can play with our tabletop terrain. You want to play 40K, play with it. Kill Team, play with it. It works for all these different systems. Why pigeonhole ourselves into our own thing? Why make the public buy our game to get our really cool terrain? Let's just make the terrain.
And also, isn't the game, I guess, industry kind of hard, like to get into or break into because like, I don't know, like terrain seems like a very useful thing for hundreds of games, any game, right? And people all have their game they like to play. And so, but if you're coming up to me and it's like, I love Warhammer, and you're saying, no, you love Warhammer, but you got to try my game. Check this out. It's like it's pretty heavy lift to get them to leave their thing.
Right. I mean, it's a niche industry. Yeah. It's a niche industry too, right? Like tabletop wargaming is, and people have their game that they play, that they like to play. And like, why try and pull somebody from what they like? Why not just give them something that they can integrate with what they are doing? It's a much better business model, build something great that people don't have access to and give it to them at an affordable price. Then like you're going to have a happy customer, right?
It's finding that value
for Tinkerturf. We very rarely do we get people like dissatisfied with our product, and maybe they aren't talking to us, but we're not. I do support as well as the other hats, and I don't see a lot of it when people have a hard time with stuff. Like I've had an issue with somebody was unable to get some parts together. They emailed me. I shipped them new parts.
Nice.
But that's like a rare thing, You
mentioned, kind of wanted to ask, you had mentioned about this other TTRPG that you and Lane were building. What does that just put on the shelf for now, or are there plans for it?
Yeah, no, we kind of just like put it aside, and like, I mean, Lane's probably mulling it about some more,
Yeah.
But
I feel like that's so much every nerd's dream.
It doesn't make sense for us to pull that to the front right now.
Yeah, you're kind of focusing on the terrain at the moment and maybe into the vault of many things.
Yeah, the vault is taking up like all of my children in the vault are taking up all of my time.
Yeah. Well, I'm curious because like Did you always want to get into the industry and be like a business serving the kind of nerdy industry or the tabletop industry? Or was that have you always been an entrepreneur, or like what kind of pushed you in that direction to want to do? Cause you could just enjoy the games and play them, right? Why take this step to getting into the business side and starting your own thing?
Okay. So this, to tap back, I went to school to be a graphic designer. I went to trade school to be a graphic designer, and I became a graphic designer. And I started working in an industry where I realized very quickly that like the skills that I have are what sells people on products. Like people buy things because they look cool, and they are marketed in a way, and that's kind of what I do, is market and design things. So I went from being an in-house designer at a software company to a front-end developer at a software company to an independent graphic designer working for clients to help them build products and sell their own stuff. Mm-hmm. So I've been in this world of creative problem solving for a long time.
You've also seen it in many different stages. You've seen it in like the building, the nuance, to the how to make it look aesthetically pleasing to help someone actually launch this. It sounds like you've seen it all. Yeah.
Exactly. Okay. The other thing is, I started doing businesses where I thought why can't we do something like this? Why can't we build something? What are the barriers to entry to build a specific type of business? You need to have some acumen. You need to have some passion for that. But you also need to sell your idea, right? If you're a nerd, you're definitely out there. If you're a nerdpreneur, right? You're definitely looking at this idea of like, this is my thing. How do I make my thing available to other people? Do other people want my thing? And then if they do want my thing, how do I make it so that they understand, or the people that may not know they want my thing will want my thing?
So how do you do that? Cause I think there's a lot of people out there who are listening who are just like, I have a thing. I don't know if anyone wants it, or I think it's cool, but how do I get people to know how cool it is from my perspective? Right. How do you think through something like that?
You have to know kind of like what your audience is, right? Like if you know yourself and know what you like, you're going to have to look for people like you to sell to. If you think that this is a thing that you're going to do for other people, how do you engage with other people to see like, hey, what do you think of this? Like asking questions, right? Ask questions, introduce it to many people and ask them, without a lot of, upfront. If someone knows kind of what terrain, like people come up to us at shows that have no idea what, we go to PAX West or we go to PAX Unplugged, and we have families that go to these shows because it's board games and they want to introduce their kids to board games. They come up to us and they're like, all right, what game is this? Right?
Right. Yeah.
And we explain to them, it's not a game per se. It's a tool for other people to use in their games. It's a toy that you can use. It's for anybody else, it's just like a 3D model. Well, you build these things. It's a 3D model that you put together. We use it to play games where, our little guys need to be in specific sections to like attack the other little guys. And this stuff provides us that visual reference and cues so that like, okay, let's protect our little guys in cover. And so explaining them, it's not a game, but a part of a lot of games is an interesting thing. So knowing like how people approach that, knowing what people think of your product without a lot of general input to them, like how do they discover it? Mm-hmm. And how do you use that discovery to then message that to other people? Right.
Well, in that context, how important are these kind of live events where you really get to confront the person you're trying to market to, right? Cause when you guys started, did you start by going to an event? Like, was that sort of the first step in terms of trying to sell this product, or did you have an online component? How did you actually get that first?
So I could tell you that story. So our first event was, I think, either the first or second PAX Unplugged. We went to PAX Unplugged with a box of laser cut pieces that we built ourselves. We put it all together and brought it to PAX. We got a couple of tables in the tabletop area and put out our terrain for people to check out. And we did that, and we got a lot of interest from people. We got, feedback on some stuff. We put it in play on other people's games where they played it, live streaming games that they had. And then we did a Kickstarter for it. And we launched that Kickstarter at the same time that we went to PAX South, which is no longer running. PAX South was in Texas, not Austin, but I forget, San Antonio, I believe. Anyway, and when we were there, we kind of ran the Kickstarter and got people excited about it and showed off the terrain again. Yeah. I lost my train of thought there.
But then the Kickstarter, I'm assuming it was successful from this sort of buzz that you created from it, right?
So we had a pretty successful Kickstarter. I had done manufacturing and procurement type stuff in my previous business. And so like this step, and I, being a graphic designer, I've had print production experience. So this next step was, finding a manufacturer that we could build our stuff with. And our original plan was, hey, we'll just print stuff, glue it to cardboard, and laser cut it out and package everything and ship it. So we'll sell all these products and we'll laser cut and build it all ourselves. So I looked at that from an outside point of view going, that is not efficient.
That doesn't sound scalable at all.
We would spend thousands of dollars on laser cutters and try and build this thing ourselves and package this thing ourselves. And I looked at that and I was like, oh, already I smell like campfire when I touch the prototype that we make. Then we have the same problem that MDF has for their terrain. It smells like campfire. How do you get that to go away? What's the better way to do this? And I looked and it's we're a tabletop game thing. This cardboard from a tabletop game is the perfect material to punch this stuff out of. That gets printed. Why can't we just do that? So I looked into manufacturers and, I ran up on Panda Manufacturing. And so I spoke to them and they were excited about us. And so we produced our first run of product out of Panda. And it was great.
So when you're doing something like that, obviously this is sort of an international manufacturer, I'm guessing, since
Panda. So a majority of the board games that are made are, I believe, made in. The majority is made in China. They're all of the board games that you see will most likely say made in China. There's a few outside of China. There's other game manufacturers out there. I believe Poland and Germany have game manufacturers as well. The U.S. has game manufacturers that they do. Delano Games does game manufacturing in the United States, and they do my Catan Junior and stuff like that. There's a place, but the majority of that game manufacturing is done in China. So I've used multiple manufacturers over there to produce.
Was there
stuff.
a guesswork in terms of when you get into, say, dealing with an international manufacturer, there's got to be some logistics there that you're worried about or hoping they can deliver or whatever, like, and the quality and all those sort of things? What are the things you're considering in terms of?
There's worries with any manufacturing, right? Like any manufacturing brings with it, like, okay, what are the headaches I'm going to have now?
Mm-hmm.
What are the challenges am I going to be faced with here? Like I did liquor before I did this. Like before getting into I didn't just get into tabletop games. Like I was into like board games a little bit, we were playing Catan at home and doing stuff like that. But I mean, this really jumped me in, like TinkerHouse really jumped me into the tabletop industry. And having come from liquor prior to that, I was in a position where I had left the liquor industry and was like looking for a different thing to do, a thing that made me feel good. Because liquor did not make me feel good.
Right.
Like that industry is it's not fun in terms of like the feeling you get from it. And I'm sure some people are just as, they're happy about it. They're into cocktail culture. They're into that idea of alcohol. But for me, it just became this thing that I was making that hurt people. And I didn't want to be in that position again.
Yeah.
So tabletop came along and was like this very inclusive, very, fun and happy and welcoming environment. And I want like that. That's what I was desperately seeking after coming from liquor. But liquor taught me, making tequila in Mexico and tequila in Jalisco was like, we're dealing with an outside company where we have to, make sure that when we're dealing with glass, we're buying like large amounts of glass from China or France or Mexico where glass is made. And so you're dealing with the same kind of like procurement stuff. And that's also something that I really enjoy. I really enjoy figuring out how to deal with manufacturers and like put all the pieces together to build a thing. So that kind of, gets into my like little spreadsheet nerd part as well.
So you enjoy the logistics, sorting, the supply chain part. I get that. I totally get that. I
love that game Factorio. You guys play Factorio at all?
I was just going to say Satisfactory is another one.
Game.
Satisfactory is pretty doggone fun too. It's got that same okay, get your assembly lines lined up and, make sure, you have to manage the output from the resource to the, inputs of the assemblers and construct. Yeah, totally. I get it.
How do I, that's kind of one of my favorite things is how do I put all these pieces together in different, quantities that I need to get to where I need to be,
I mean, it makes sense with the items that you have, what you're making makes sense. I did want to kind of circle back on a question that we had just touched on of what is a large hurdle in the industry of manufacturing that say probably is very common and maybe one that you had to navigate, and how did you navigate? And if, for example, like perishable goods, right? You've got to figure out, shelf life. You've got to figure out how to preserve the product for as long as possible. But, with manufacturing something that, isn't perishable, with manufacturing something that has these stages, I don't know them very well, but there's, you got to get the art on it. You got to cut them out. You got to then package them and ship them. Like, is there something in this process that was a really big hurdle that a lot of other people have dealt with, and how did you navigate it?
First step in all this is finding a manufacturer, right? Because you touched on something earlier, like how do you feel comfortable with doing this? I'm sure you're familiar with Stonemeyer Games. Are you familiar with that?
Familiar with the name, yeah.
Yeah. So Jamie put together like this list of manufacturers, and it's like rated and had all this stuff, and I came across that and used that list to figure out, okay, who are these sources or trusted sources for manufacturers I could go to quote out what I'm doing. I kind of knew how to talk about this stuff from a manufacturing standpoint because I'm in the print industry, and it's basically the print industry. So that was a thing.
Do you, is it like, oh, I found them online and I got a phone number and you call them? Or is it like just, like, do you have to get to a sales rep to figure this kind of thing out?
Do you have to know somebody?
Or is it,
email?
Email, just like send them a message, say, hey, I want to build something.
Yeah, I'm interested in getting a quote for a product that we're building. This is what I've got. And then have a rep. Usually they have a rep that'll speak to you. A lot of the big game manufacturers in China have English speaking reps that will reach out to you or contact you. The language barrier is not such a hurdle. Like that's a solvable thing. Communication can be difficult sometimes, or describing your ideas. So be prepared to napkin sketch things or make sure that you understand, what you're getting into. A lot of people that do kind of tabletop games already kind of know materials, what they want to use for materials. But, all these game manufacturers have like their sales kits that they send out that have all of the, dice or injected minis or playing chip,
and you can feel
paper
and touch and feel
box stuff that they have listed their materials on them. So you can kind of figure out, okay, I want this to be this thick of a playing card, so I need this thickness of a thing. So, that's a big one.
So do you get like a sample of what they're going to design and create for you before you kind of invest? Because it sounds to me like if you're doing this in your manufacturing, you're not manufacturing one. If you're dealing with one of these companies, right? You're probably doing like, I don't know, 1,000 of them or something, right? Like, I don't know what are the numbers that way, but when you're doing that, you just get them to send you a prototype and then you go from there, yes, no, or is it kind of like
give you a rundown of how this process works? If that would be helpful to people too.
Yeah, sure. Let's see. Yeah, I'm curious what that really looks like.
So if you're designing a game, you're going to build the game yourself. You're going to make the game yourself. You're going to put it together. You're going to game test it with people. You're going to, by the time you're ready for manufacturing, you have kind of an idea of what the components in your game are. I'm going to have 2 dice. I'm going to have 50 cards. I'm going to have a board. So you know kind of what your components are by building a game. There are companies out there that you can hire that will build like 1 to 50 of your game. It's not going to be cheap. And they're doing prototype versions. So they're probably doing digital print on stuff and laminating it. They have the tools and the machines to do the bigger work, but they're doing the one-off ones. And those are great. Like if you're a game designer or an entry into game design, those are great companies to make use of to kind of put something together that you can send to, like a media person or bring to a show to showcase or use to take pictures of to do a Kickstarter or a crowdfunding event. Then you have kind of a list of components that you want. Now, game manufacturers that you contact have kind of like a sales kit that will give you their kind of basic show off, like any foils or glossy coatings or paper stock or card stock or the cardboard board thicknesses. They'll provide you with their sample box essentially so that you can spec out what you want. Now, I do like spreadsheets and try and, this is the component name, this is the file name, this is the what it's made out of, and this is how many I need type thing. And I send that off to get a quote, and I'll get 2 or 3 quotes from different manufacturers and figure out which one's going to work best for me. Now, in choosing a manufacturer, you can look at the ones in Europe and check with them. They're a little more expensive. The ones in the United States are going to be, priced a little bit higher, but they don't come with shipping, right? And then there's the ones in China, and there's a lot of them in China, and they're constantly adding more. And those ones are less expensive, but they come with shipping logistics, which means that when you're finished with your product, you have to put it in a container on a boat and ship it to yourself. And that takes 3 months to get across the water. So you're adding 3 months to your manufacturing time in China. And then, potentially here in the US, we're, after the election, we're going to be hit with possible tariffs. We don't know if that's going to happen yet. The game industry is kind of like freaking out right now that the tariffs are going to come in on Chinese goods and we're going to get annihilated, or at least, games that were, $30 or $40 are going to be $80 or $90 to purchase. We're all scared about that, but that's not happening yet. We don't know what's happening with that yet. We'll figure out what happens when it does. But there's no there's no big alternative. There's a lot of the finer quality pieces get made in China. Still, we get a quote back, we choose a vendor, and then that process is a multi-tiered process. You provide them with the files, you provide them with, they should have the specs of everything already. And then usually what they'll do is they'll put together a white sample. So it's like a blank of everything. Shows you the knife cuts of all the punched out pieces. It'll show you the cards packaged up. And that kind of gives you this is the form factor, how everything fits in the box and stuff like that. And then they'll give you a kind of middle tier, like digital print version of your game. So for all intents and purposes, it'll kind of look like the final game, but there might be color issues or brightness from digital press that you get better quality of from offset press in to look at. And that's called your manufacturer sample. The manufacturer sample means they've printed everything. You've signed off on the digital stuff. They've printed everything and they've put one together for you, and then they ship it off to you. So I have, you can choose to have one to as many. They cost extra to get more manufacturer samples, but then you've got this manufacturer sample in your hands, and that's the final game. So that's the one that will go into print. So anything, if there's anything out of ordinary, like if there's pieces missing from it or something like that, that's the time you can say, okay, there's, we didn't have this right thing, or this wasn't in the right place, or we're missing something. The final chance for you to make anything. And then they go into manufacturing and produce everything.
How long would that whole process take, do you think? Because it sounds like, okay, you're in communication, you're having them make it, they're shipping it, they're doing that. And is that like a month process? Is it a 6-month process? Is it like a year?
So, it takes a while. Depending on how complex your product is, it takes a while. So, with our vault, it's been a long process.
It's a lot of pieces.
Yeah, there's a lot of pieces in that product. The main set itself has like over 1,800 individual pieces.
Wow.
And so we're back and forth on quotes for a while, and, getting things right, making sure that everybody's on the same page with a quote is right, is good. There's an industry term, industry thing of you're going to get a quote, probably going to want to add 20% to that quote. That's usually what's going to happen. So you'll get a quote, add 20%, see if you can do it, and then, pull the trigger.
Yeah, I'd imagine there's a lot of times where you have to go back and forth on a sample, maybe not a physical sample, but like a digital one that you get. There's a lot of hey, this needs to be changed. This attention to detail on this card is supposed to actually look like this. I'm sure there's, a lot of human error that happens in the process that requires a lot of back and forth that takes a lot of time.
I do the print production for our stuff. And a lot of times it's a me is the human is the error. So we do a process where we print everything locally so that we can tell, I print everything with dye, the dye lines on it, so I can tell if there are any kind of major issues. Especially with the vault where, I've got sheets and sheets and sheets of standees that, everything needs to align right. If you get a misalignment, you're going to have an unhappy customer with a dwarf with a cut off axe. And I don't want that. So I got to make sure that that process is a smooth process. And if I go back and forth and make changes in pre-production in China, that's going to take me a lot longer, because they'll send over digital proofs of everything and you can look through it on a digital proof. It's not the same.
Sure.
I want, you get a hard proof from a digital proof and you can find those tiny little things that kind of, I'm by no means a perfectionist, but, it happens that you'll have some issues. And if you can catch them before you go across the water, you're going to be better.
Yeah.
So we do a lot of printing before we send off files so that we can double check in physical form that things look great. There is a back and forth, but there's, you're not going to want to do a ton of back and forth. I mean, if it's a glaring issue, you're going to want to fix that glaring issue. And that's the back and forth that you get.
So is this like a 6-month process, or is it more of like a year, or like,
our terrain products took a fairly long time. Like we quoted, I couldn't give you exact numbers now, so I'm going to kind of glad hand this a little bit, but we took about a month or two for quoting back and forths. And then when we actually got, files in their hands, we got a bunch of samples back. And a lot of times it was great. A lot of times we had to reconfigure stuff. So one of the major loopholes with that was we had a material that was spec'd at 2 millimeters. They call it 2 millimeter board, but it's 1.6 to 1.8 millimeters is really what it is. So when I'm building 2 millimeter slots and I've got a 1.6 or 1.8 millimeter board, the stairs that should fit snug in the rail of the stair don't fit snug. They fall out, right? And so, there were back and forths on the tooling part, which is all in white board that we had to go through. And, that took a while. So we would send them, they'd have the die tools, they'd build the tooling, and then they'd have to rebuild the tooling. And one of the other things was that we put everything together in different sheets as well. So like if there was a small problem with one aspect of this, there were a lot of other things on that sheet too that needed to get, if that tool needed to get rebuilt, that cost came to us to rebuild that tool. So there's a lot of little back and forth that happen there. So those are kind of some pitfalls too, is like have your materials beforehand so that you can, put a caliper on it and find out exactly how thick it is.
Yeah, because it could be a cascade of extra expenses, right? Of failures. Because if one thing doesn't fit in one, cutout, then all of a sudden everything else on that cutout doesn't fit either. And so it becomes a real issue. I could see that. And then you just mentioned something around cost too. And that's another thing is like, if I'm a nerdpreneur and I'm thinking, I want to build my own board game, or I want to build my own terrain, or do these kind of things that you guys are doing, work with an overseas manufacturer. I want to do this. How much money should I budget and save to be able to even start this process? Because I think that, I don't know that I could do this for $1,000, but like, is this like, should I have tens of thousands of dollars ready to invest to be able to do this? Is this kind of, that's the level of investment you need?
This is not $1,000 things. Yeah. This is like 20 or 30, a bit more complex.
Yeah, I figured it's got to be. And then the question on that is like, when you're thinking about this from a business perspective and you're going to be investing tens of thousands of dollars into this venture, how do you think about going out there and making it happen after that? Is it all through like, we got to build this Kickstarter to this amount so that we can know we're making kind of that investment back? Or is there like, we're going to price our product at, like, how do you think of the economics of this after it's been decided you're going to go forward with it?
Right. So we like to think about the economics before we decide to go forward with it.
Yeah, for sure.
Kind of important. You don't want to get yourself into a problem where you have, an unreasonable
bill,
right?
Yeah,
don't say I'm going to build a big, game with a bunch of, plastic minis and start a Kickstarter at $5,000 and think that if you got 6, you're going to be okay. You got to go out there and quote stuff first. You got to go out there and build your thing first. You got to have that kind of sample that you're doing understood. I mean, I think that goes with anything that people build, right? If it's not board games, it's something else. If you know you want to build a thing and create a thing, whether it's a toy, a game, a food product, whatever it is, you have to understand what that cost is to you up front and what the levels of that cost is. I mean, when you're manufacturing stuff, the more you get, the less it costs.
Mm-hmm.
So if I'm doing 500 of something and I have the option to do 1,500, or if I'm doing 1,500, I have the option to do 5,000. It's like you look at that exponential cost. You break things down as if you were going to do the lower product, right? Most board game manufacturers have a minimum quantity requirement of about 1,500. So you're going to do 1,500 games. So everything gets, quoted out 1,500 minimum, and then you can step up. And as you step up, the cost goes down. So if you try to get 1,500 people to back your crowdfunding of your game, you should know how much that game costs you, and then factor in like at least 20% for how much overrun you're going to have on that cost. And then how much is it going to cost to ship? Generally speaking, a pallet of 40-foot container of product will ship for about $5,000 from China to the US. Sometimes it goes up.
Yeah, if you're lucky. I mean, container costs these days are sometimes I've seen them in the, during the pandemic, it was like 14, it was nuts.
We were quoted at one point. So we had, during the pandemic, we had our second Kickstarter shipping. And we had to sit on that product because there was no way that we could afford shipping. And thank goodness Panda let us sit on that product in the warehouse for as long as they did. Because we they were quoting us like $50,000 to ship. We had two different containers. One had to go to the UK and one had to go to us in the US. And it was just an unreasonable amount of money. And that was, a perfect storm of like, the Evergrande blocking the Suez Canal, right? That we had a strike at the port in LA, right? We had a tariff war going on where our products were no longer being imported into China. So China had no containers. So LA's port was filled with containers that nobody was putting on ships to get back because nobody was buying anything. They had to deadhead or ship empty containers back to China. And then shipping was just backed out because of demand from all of that stuff. So what happened? We ended up like, there's no way you're going to ship out soon, A. B, we don't know what the price is going to be next week or next month. So it's like you're just sitting on this stuff going, I could air freight this cheaper than I could ship it, but I can't afford to ship it. So like, what do I do?
Yeah. Well, what do you do? Just wait, or
take out a big loan from a partner company and pay it back over 4 years.
Yeah.
God. Wow. I do know on kind of like there were a few things I backed during, actually just before the pandemic hit, and it was super unfortunate for them. One was like another terrain company, another one was like a starter box set for some D&D 5e content, but one of those D&D 5e boxes that shipped was from a small company up in British Columbia on Vancouver Island. And they had such a cool product and it was a cool idea. You had some like resin minis, you had an adventure, you had some homebrewed rules in it. And when I finally got the product, it was like much later, of course, like most things. But also the really sad part was that company went under. And I tried to find them and reach out just to tell them, hey, thank you for what you made. Like, this is really beautiful. I really appreciate what you did. And really sorry to hear, about how costly it was. but I couldn't find them. I couldn't even find their email. Which was an odd thing, even in their packaging. They didn't have any way to get in touch with them, which I thought was odd, but maybe they had received so much negative feedback because of the delay. Because this was in the beginning, when delays like this were just kind of delays to this extent were new. And it was unheard of. And so maybe they just wanted to disconnect from everything. But I still haven't seen them anywhere else. And it just goes to show with like the dangers, the kind of pitfalls. I mean, sure, the pandemic was an extreme example, but I'm sure, and maybe you could speak to this, some other examples of times where you've seen companies that they don't plan accordingly. They don't build in that 20% additional budget. They don't sample locally if they're going to be manufacturing overseas. And people that fall into these pitfalls. Maybe have you seen any examples that have come up that have been good lessons for yourself?
Examples of other folks that have been good examples of us. I can't think of any off the top of my head.
What are some of the hard-won lessons you may have experienced yourself that other manufacturers or people looking to get into something like this could learn from your experience or mistakes?
Okay. Yeah. Like definitely shop your stuff to different shops, because pricing could, the big thing is like, your pricing on your products could change drastically between one manufacturer to another. We used Panda to start off, and they're a great company and they make beautiful board games, but they are expensive. We went to Long Pack Games with some of our stuff, and the pricing was much better, and their product is still very beautiful. So, definitely shop around, and don't be afraid to use multiple manufacturers. There's no reason why. The biggest concern with using multiple manufacturers or even between runs of printing a product is game consistency. You want your artwork to look the same. And for us, we have a product that, if a run doesn't look the same from run to run, then someone that buys one part from an earlier run and a part from the second run, it has to match on the table. You have to be able to put it together and it look the same, not have, a different print quality. And it's a hard thing to hit because, when printing, you have to take into consideration all the environmental issues that come with printing.
Like what?
Moisture in the air, humidity, if it's a climate controlled print shop, like those things matter to ink, how it goes on paper, quality of paper matters, all of that stuff matters to match a thing to another thing. So, but that said, if you're doing a game that's just a game and you want, you're producing a bunch of them, it doesn't hurt to shop it around or to split it up between multiple manufacturers. If you want to do, 20,000 units, you could put 10,000 at one shop and 10,000 at another shop, and you should get the same quality of product, at the end.
If you're looking at sort of the higher quality, you mentioned that the people you work with are higher quality, right? And so if you were to say, but go to the cheapest person, you're probably not going to get as good a quality. So does it make sense to, I think a lot of people who might be going to this first time would be thinking, well, let's just do the cheapest thing potentially, but then there are probably issues around that too. And is it better to just go to something where you're going to get the quality, and then maybe you do charge more for your product, but that also allows the product to be just something that people love and then they come back for, et cetera? Like targeting the high end or the higher end of the market is something I've heard works better for business, and instead of trying to get as many people as possible at the low end where the quality is maybe not as good. How do you think about that balance of needing to get the highest quality for the best value for your clients and people who buy it?
So that's a good question. Quality is a lot of times you can go overboard. I mean, or not overboard, but like you don't need to be the most expensive to get the best quality. It doesn't necessarily translate like that. Sometimes the more expensive is the busier company, right? Like I'm too busy to take on so many clients. If I raise my rates, I get less clients and a larger, there's different reasons why things cost different things. And it's not necessarily quality based. So, the lowest quality of something or the lowest price of something might not necessarily be the lowest quality. When you vet your manufacturers, look at the things that they've done before. A lot of games out there have multiple manufacturers. You'll find the same game done by one manufacturer, done by another. There's a second printing or whatever. I mean, I know that Everdale was printed at multiple different print shops. You can look at these things and say, here's the quality of this one print shop, here's the quality of this other, by just looking at the bottom and look by the UPC. It has a little logo usually of the company that printed it. I mean, that's part of that deal. You can look for yourself to see what the quality is and not necessarily go by, I want to be the cheapest out there. I mean, because you can go with a really expensive company and still get the cheapest quality product, from them.
Sure.
And that's definitely not, a thing that I look at when I'm looking at this stuff. Like our goals at TinkerHouse are to create a quality product that people want to buy. Like I'm not going to produce something that, even I wouldn't want to buy. Like I don't want something that's going to fall apart. Like I wouldn't want that. So I'm not going to sell it to somebody else. So we look at this idea of what can we afford to build with what we've got. When we do a crowdfunding campaign, we quote our products out first and we put the numbers together and say, hey, this is what we need to get to where we are. And then we start adding stuff after. Like, can we do something more? Can we get a better quality board stock? Do we need a better quality board stock? Is it necessary to get there? Like, what kind of finish are we putting on this? Is it necessary to do that? Like,
almost like a minimum viable product, and then you kind of
we have a minimum
extras.
viable for us,
right,
in mind when we do stuff. Like it needs to be something that's sturdy, something that's engineered well, something that holds up to play for a while, because I don't want someone to play with our game or our terrain and it break and then they don't play with it anymore. I want it to be sturdy or a capable product, right?
Mm-hmm. So is your model generally like the Kickstarter starter model? Like you said, that was how you started with it, and you kind of build the hype, go to the events, get a bunch of people on the Kickstarter, and then you fund it, and then have it happen. Or do you guys have now, like, because I see you have a website where you sell this stuff, right? And people can just go there and click a button and buy it. Is there just stock that you have, or is it like you've got an on-demand type thing? How does that all work now for you?
Yeah, so it's stock basically. So we have let me address the first part. The first part is, what's the model? What's the business model for us?
Yeah.
We Kickstart, or not Kickstart, but we crowdfund because we use BackerKit as well for crowdfunding. Mm-hmm. So we will crowdfund a product with the people that have backed us before. So we have an audience. Like the important part about crowdfunding is you have to have an audience. You have to create an audience, or you have to build an audience, because if you don't have an audience, you can't really crowdfund. So like,
right.
When we built our audience, we went to shows, we introduced things, we got people signed up on newsletters. We built an audience before we crowdfunded our first product. Building that audience, then we crowdfund and do this. We've always wanted to get to a point where we can build the thing that we want to do and then crowdfund it and then push it out. Right. So like, that's the goal, right?
Crowdfunding has become incredibly popular, especially in the board game industry. I'm backing at least one project every 2 months, usually games and miniatures. Our guest, Chris from TinkerHouse Games, goes on to share his key lessons from crowdfunding and other ways you can make money in the board game world. Maybe not enough to buy a yacht, but enough to keep making board games. You can get the entirety of this conversation with him over on our Patreon at patreon.com/nerdpreneur. Head on over, and for just $5 a month, you'll get the entirety of this interview and more than 30 other full interviews. Get that over on patreon.com/nerdpreneur. All right, now back to the interview with Chris from TinkerHouse Games.
All right, you want me to roll?
Yeah, go for it.
82.
82.
What is it?
What is something that is really popular now, but in 5 years, everyone will look back on and be embarrassed by?
Oh, God. President-elect?
I like that. That is a great answer. Timely in our world right now.
That's good.
Yeah.
Go ahead, roll another one.
76.
Okay. If you were to turn a fairy tale into a Black Mirror or X-Files episode, what fairy tale would you choose?
Oh, that'd be Hansel and Gretel, I think.
Ooh, that'd be interesting, right? I wonder what the X-Files version of that would be, right?
2 kids abducted, and then they have to escape. I feel like it's actually done a fair bit.
Or maybe there's like just kids lost in the forest, and they come across like a house, but then it slowly becomes apparent that everything about the house is disturbing, and they're actually being prepped for something awful. So yeah, I could see that working. There's this slow horror to that whole fairy tale that people don't realize.
Grimm's fairy tales were all super dark, right?
Yeah. Totally.
Sure.
Nice. Go ahead and do one more.
35.
What's the best Wi-Fi name you've ever seen?
Oh, man. I can't think of one off the top of my head. I know I've seen some really, really, really great ones, but I can't place. I'm really bad at remembering.
That's all good. Go ahead and roll another one, though.
Let's do another one. Yeah. The best Wi-Fi. I know. I use my Wi-Fi name is FBI Mobile.
Oh, that's good.
That's pretty good.
That's good, actually. One of my favorite is Wu-Tang LAN.
Wu-Tang LAN. That's awesome.
Yeah, that was pretty fun.
That's good.
I had another one that I saw, which it's an old meme reference, but it was like Ermagerd Werfer.
Oh my goodness. Okay.
Do you remember that meme, the Ermagerd girl?
Yeah, the girl with the goosebumps. Ermagerd Goosebumps.
Yep. Yeah.
That dates us pretty good.
I know. I mean, for the Wi-Fi thing, I've seen some really clever ones, like, Nacho Wi-Fi.
Yeah, Nacho Wi-Fi.
Yeah. That one's good too.
30.
Am I reading this one?
Yeah, go for it.
Sure. All right. One second. What's a movie or TV show you would pay lots to have a studio actually reboot?
I think Firefly.
Really?
That's a classic one. Yeah.
I mean, I loved Firefly.
It was very fun.
That was a lot of fun.
Definitely ended too soon.
It was just a really fascinating universe too, like the way that they had actually created, because there's the sci-fi universe there was deep. Okay. It had a lot of great. Yeah.
I have a good second to that, because you brought that to my mind. Like in terms of universe building, its most recent show on HBO, I believe it was. It's a cartoon. I got to think about it.
All right, let's see if we can find it.
Let me just do it.
There's not that many HBO cartoons.
Yeah,
I feel like
it slipped my mind.
Scavenger Rain.
Right?
Yes. Oh my God, Scavenger Rain got canceled for season 2. So I think a good second for mine would be Scavenger Rain. Scavenger Rain was an amazing world building show.
Oh yeah.
Like,
was it like post-apocalyptic?
No, without too much given away to the audience viewers. It's it's about a crew of kind of like a shipping company spaceship that crashes on a planet, and that planet, is not hospitable to their life.
You're being very.
I highly recommend it to anybody that's like into sci-fi. It's the world that they built in that show is like nothing I've ever seen before in television shows. Like, and it's massive. Like, and the the interpersonal relationship struggles that these characters go through are hard hitting and real. Just check it out if you haven't seen it. Scavenger Rain. Maybe we can get enough people together to watch it. They're looking for another studio to create season 2, but that
Fingers
show,
crossed.
the showrunners running that as a serial where there's something else different happening each time, I would pay lots and lots of money to see.
Nice. Well, that's awesome. That's a great show. I didn't even know about it, so I'll
have to check
might
it
be
out.
one of the problems.
Yeah, it wasn't. I don't think it was marketed that well. I mean, it's a hard one. I mean, did you guys see the Hangar 11? I think it was, or
No, I've heard of it though. It's kind of like an X-Files, I think, where the hangar is where it's like this top secret group of some kind.
maybe I'm thinking of something else. Station 11. Sorry, Station 11.
No, I haven't heard of that one.
Station 11 was also a really great TV show to watch. There's only one season of it, I believe, because it's a limited series. But it's like a post-apocalyptic show that follows a bunch of different people. Highly recommend it.
Okay. Nice.
Cool.
Station 11.
Station 11. It's got the girl from *Halt and Catch Fire*, and I think she was in The Martian as well.
All right. Let's do rapid fire, and we'll do a few of these, and then we're all finished up.
Okay.
Yeah, so these are rapid fire is quick and silly questions. For example, and you may be right or wrong, and we'll figure it out. But what is better, Star Trek or Star Wars?
Trek Wars, right? Star Wars?
Yeah.
Which is better?
Great.
Oh,
This
goodness.
is when I push the button on Dr. Evil's panel and your chair flies
My
back
chair
and
falls
flames
back.
shoot out. Yeah.
Oh, gosh. Yeah. Okay.
Which one?
He doesn't want to pick sides, man. His
not a
business
side.
depends on it.
Right? My young me wants Star Wars. My old me likes Star Trek. It's just about,
That's good.
There
There you go. That's good.
there's a dichotomy of like, what my core beliefs are, right? Like Star Trek fits better with my old me, but Star Wars was my young me all the way.
Well, what is the best munchie?
The best munchie?
Yeah, like snack food.
Take 5. Reese's Take 5.
Well, I wish we had those in Canada. There's so many Reese's varieties we don't get in Canada. That's frustrating. But yeah.
Which is better, the Game of Thrones books or the TV show?
Oh, I mean, the TV show is easier to digest than the books, but, the TV show all the way up to the last season.
Yeah, I would say that too, honestly, because I don't even know what
And
the
then
end of
let's
the books
wait
is.
for the last one.
Yeah, let's find out.
Yeah, let's find out.
Yeah.
How many cats is too many cats?
4.
Immediate answer. I love it.
Boom. Monopoly or Risk?
Risk.
Predator or Aliens?
Aliens.
What superpower do you want?
None of them.
3
You want to know
favorite.
why? You want to know why?
Why?
Yes.
Why?
All of the superpowers have like problems. If I was invisible, I couldn't see because light wouldn't reflect off my retinas.
That'd be fun. It's like you can go turn invisible anytime, but you go blind. Right. All right. What are your 3 favorite pizza toppings?
My favorite toppings on a pizza?
Yeah. What are your favorite toppings?
Is it on one pizza?
One pizza.
On one pizza.
Three toppings, one pizza. What are your three?
One pizza. Yeah. I would go with Canadian bacon, pineapple, and feta.
Ooh,
nice. Oh,
that was good.
It's a good saltiness.
Yeah.
What's the difference between a nerd and a geek?
Oh, persuasion.
Persuasion, like their charisma level.
I think like a geek wants you to do what he wants. What he's doing, and a nerd kind of does it for himself. Maybe.
Interesting.
I geek out on something. It's like I'm geeking out on something because I'm telling it to somebody else. Like I'm geeking out on something because I'm trying to get other people. And like if I'm nerding out on something, I'm doing it internally. Like I'm nerding out on this. I'm doing it. So I would say persuasion.
I like how you're verbing those words. That's cool. Turning them into actions that we live into. That's cool.
Yeah.
All right, Dune or Mad Max?
Dune.
Correct
Dogs
answer.
or cats?
Cats.
Best Christmas movie?
Die Hard.
Best. There we go.
Nice. Who is more evil, Dolores Umbridge or Voldemort?
Dolores Umbridge.
100%. DC or Marvel?
Marvel.
Oh, this one's controversial.
Okay.
Apple or PC?
Apple.
Oh, man.
Nice.
I'm a designer.
Steve Frank.
Forever.
I love it when things go my way.
My work computer's an Apple. It is very good.
I mean, I was an Apple kid when I was a kid, right?
Yeah.
Apple was big into education
it's true. Yeah.
They kind of like put it in us in the 80s. Like you went to school, you had Apple. Like I played Oregon Trail on an Apple. I played like all those other games on an Apple.
We always like to finish off our interviews with, a lot of people are thinking about their ideas and saying, could this be a business? Should I go into business? Should I make this nerdpreneur journey? And I always like to ask our nerdpreneurs, like, what do you think? What advice would you give people if they're looking to become a nerdpreneur like yourself?
Life's too short not to take chances. I mean, do it. Go out there on a limb and do it. I mean, get your ducks in a row first. Like figure out, is this, potentially something that's going to destroy my life, but you can, there's levels, right? There's grays, right? You don't need to quit your job to be an entrepreneur. You don't need to spend all of your time to be an entrepreneur. I mean, when you're actually an entrepreneur and you're doing this as a living, then you're going to be spending a lot of time. But if you want to make your dreams realized, take that leap and make them realized. Work nights, work weekends, take the time that you have sitting around doing other things and put it into your nerdpreneurship, like just go for it. There's no reason to not do something, right? Like that. I mean, time is the reason to not do something. If you're working 2 or 3 jobs and you're just sleeping and eating, then I'd say probably not. Probably not. Like that. But if you've got time and you're just doing other stuff, like take some of that time that you've got and put it aside for your passion that you want to do. Do your research, look, ask questions, ask people, ask me. Hell, reach out. Like if you got questions, I'm happy to answer them. I mean, I don't have a ton of time, but I definitely, find resources. That's how I started out with this stuff, finding the resources. Other people are there to help and other people like to help.
Yeah, we found that so much in our exploration of this whole thing is that people are so much more willing to help and share what they've learned and the lessons. So hit that subscribe, click that follow button so you don't miss any other Nerdpreneur updates as well. Because if you're thinking about it, we'll be here as a resource for you. Well, Chris, thank you so much for coming on and being a part of this. Where can people go and support you guys, get some Tinker Terrain or TinkerHouse Games or anything else that you sell? Where can they go? You can visit us at tinkerhouse.com, tinkerhousegames.com, excuse me.
We do have Facebook, and we do have some other social stuff. And I just got a TinkerHouse Blue Sky social network set up, and I'm trying to figure all that out. So look there as well. But I mean, you can find us at TinkerHouseGames.com, and yeah, there's our store. You'll be able to, pre-order the Vault of Many Things still if you're interested in that. But check us out. And ask for us at your friendly local game store if you're looking for terrain and you're out in the wild, because they'll be able to bring it in.
Awesome.
Nice.
Amazing.
Well, thank you. This was wonderful.
Hey, Chris, Frank, thank you so much for doing this. This is great. And I appreciate you both for elevating our industry.
We're doing our best.
Appreciate you for just educating us all on this process in detail. I mean, it's been elusive, so really grateful to have someone like you on the show that can really shed some light in this direction.
Yeah,
thank you.
And as always, Nerdpreneurs, thanks for listening. And as always,
keep it nerdy.